Jonathan Smith Show on Indie Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indie Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indie Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indie Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're listening on the Indie Sports Ticket app, but you can download wherever you find your apps. You can also listen to the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3 over there today. You can also watch on X __ Jonathan Smith, and you can also obviously listen on 1430 AM in your car. Now, I've got 1,000,001 takes to get to today. Fever fight last night. I got a take on the Pacers in the finals. I got a Myles Turner take. It's takes galore. But something happened to me last night, and I don't tell stories very often, but we're going to try today. So last night, I have a wife who likes to go out and do things. It's good for me. She drags me places. And last night, we went and we played sand volleyball. And I won't lie to you. Like, at first, I didn't really want to go. And then I got out there. I started dominating. I was like, I'm really glad I came. It was fun. And so we get done. And, we just burned like 2,000 calories or whatever playing all that volleyball for a couple hours. And so my wife is like, hey, like let's go get food. And I'm like, okay, what do you want? And, my wife never wants anything specific. But last night she was like, I want pizza. I was like, okay. So we go get Marco's. Marco's Pizza, fantastic. And we do, the whole takeout thing. So like I'm online and I'm ordering. And everyone wants you to make an account for everything now. I'm so tired of that. So tired of having to make an account for everything. And so it asks me if I want to make an account. And I'm like, absolutely not. So I, continue as a guest, and I put in my real name, Jonathan Smith. People ask me all the time why the show was called The Real Jonathan Smith Show. You're about to find out why. So we get to Marco's, and we go inside to grab the pizza. And the guy behind the counter asks us, he's like, why are you ordering pizza under an alias? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, my name is Jonathan Smith. That is my real name. And, it just goes to reinforce the idea that Jonathan Smith sounds like a name that you would give to someone in witness protection. And for me, that is not the case. That is my real name. And yeah, it happened last night. And I was like, I have to tell this story because it fully explains why the show is called The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Now that that's out of the way, Fever got in a fight last night, and I'm just so tired of this. I'm just so annoyed by it, because people, I've got the TV on here, and the show that I have on, no free ads. They're leading with this, and they're asking the question: does Caitlin Clark have a target on her back? Dumb question. Yes, obviously, right? It's been this way for the last 2 years, right? And they say, well, if does Caitlin Clark have a target on her back? If that's the wrong question, then what's the right one? Is it why does Caitlin Clark have a target on her back? I think it's all the same reasons as last year. The women of the NBA don't like Caitlin Clark because she's better than them. They don't like her because, fans like her more than everybody else, right? They don't like her for all the political reasons that you can run through. She's white, she's straight, all that kind of stuff. I'm just really kind of sick of it. And the WNBA clearly has to do something about this. So you can go find this anywhere. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. But I do want to mention something that I think is pretty important. Caitlin Clark runs her mouth quite a bit. And I am pro trash talk. I think everyone should talk as much trash as possible. Personally. Maybe that's just me. And, that doesn't really help. It doesn't help the situation whatsoever. And last night, she's playing against this woman that she played against in college. And, in college, I think the chick played at Stanford. I don't even know her name. And, and they got into it when they were playing at Iowa and Oregon or wherever that woman was playing at. And, and then that woman plays for the Sun, and she's the one who hit her in the face, and then she gets bumped and all that kind of stuff. And then I see people complaining about how the rest of the Fever team didn't run over to help her, even though Lexi Hull got in it pretty quickly. But I don't like it. And then to close the game, we have another fight. And I actually appreciate this. Sophie Cunningham commits a pretty clear flagrant foul last night. Whoever she's chasing down, she just bear hugs and tackles to the ground. And then we have another, female fight, which are not fun, by the way. Someone who witnessed multiple female fights in high school, brutal. Like hair getting ripped out, claws out. It's brutal. But I do appreciate Sophie Cunningham committing that hard foul late. The Fever didn't have that last year. They didn't have a single woman on their team who would have done that. Also, learned a pretty interesting fact about Sophie Cunningham last night. She is apparently the youngest black belt in Missouri history, like the state of Missouri. So she got a black belt in some sort of martial arts. She is the James Johnson of the Indiana Fever. And so I appreciate her taking that hard foul late. But, can we maybe do it when Caitlin Clark gets knocked over the first time? I don't think Sophie Cunningham was on the floor, so this isn't, directed at her, but someone else. Like let's step in there and let's get something figured out. Okay. I'm just really tired of this though. The WNBA clearly needs to fix this. And this isn't just a Caitlin Clark thing. Like if you watch other WNBA games, there's altercations like this all the time. All the time. And they've got to find a way to reel this in. And it has to happen earlier. The whistle needs to be tighter. I understand that people enjoy the physicality of basketball, but the NBA is incredibly physical. Okay, not as physical as the WNBA. So if the WNBA could reduce the level of physicality down to what the NBA has, where there's hand checking and there's some bumping and there's some bumps when you go to the rim and all those things, then you wouldn't have this. Because ultimately, what I think the WNBA wants people to talk about are the players. And we're not talking about the players. We're talking about, I guess we kind of are. We're talking about Caitlin Clark and how much everybody hates her. And they shouldn't hate her. And we can do the whole thing where it's she's the face of the league. You should take care of her. It's no, that is not the Connecticut Sun's job. The Connecticut Sun's job is to beat her. That is their job. Okay? And if they're allowed to get physical with her, then they should. And this is where the WNBA needs to step in and keep this from happening. Also, I do find this really interesting. I don't know how well this actually compares. When Michael Jordan was going through the Pistons, and the Pistons were overly physical with him, the whole you can only call one foul per play, so they'd foul him 3 times on his way to the rim. And as soon as the whistle blew, you got Bill Laimbeer flying in there, laying him out. People were on probably Michael Jordan's side because he's Michael Jordan and everyone loved him, even though this is pre-championships Michael Jordan and, things change throughout time, but superstars before they win titles are always questioned. They are. So maybe people weren't on Michael Jordan's side as much during that part of his career. This is important. It is. It is important for the WNBA to get in front of this and to clean up their game because it is way too physical. But publicity is not a bad thing, no matter what it is, especially when it involves the 3rd most popular basketball player in the world, men or women. LeBron James is the most famous basketball player in the world. Steph Curry is the 2nd most famous basketball player in the world. Caitlin Clark's 3rd. So they've got to clean this up. That starts with the officiating. Coach White had a long thing on it last night, and she's exactly right. She basically said that they allowed the game to be too physical early. And the WNBA refs have got to clean it up. And until they do, you're going to get more and more crap like this. All right, done with that. Pacers. NBA Finals continue tomorrow night, Game 6 at home with an opportunity to close it out, to be done. Not to close out and be done. Excuse me. What am I talking about there? My bad. With an opportunity to force a Game 7. Right? The Thunder have an opportunity to close it out and be done. But the Pacers, they have their back against the wall. Tyrese Haliburton scheduled for an MRI. People are freaking out. And I am going to talk about that, but there's something else that I'd like to hit on first. And it is the Pacers have to win the NBA Finals this year. It is so important. Tyrese Haliburton is 25 years old. Pascal Siakam's 31. And every other Pacer is younger than Pascal Siakam. After the Pacers extend Myles Turner this offseason, they're going to have everyone on this current NBA Finals roster under contract next season. And you're going to hear talking heads, and you're going to hear Pacer fans tell you that, the Pacers are going to have an opportunity to be back in the NBA Finals next year, and how they're going to get back next year. And when they get back, they're probably going to win it because they're going to have more experience and all this stuff. And that's just not necessarily true. Things happen. Something happened over the weekend. The Orlando Magic made a trade for Desmond Bane. And you're like, the Magic, they were like a 7 seed this year. True. But the Magic were really good before Paolo Banchero missed a significant amount of time with like a left oblique strain. And then Franz Wagner missed a lot of time with a left oblique strain. And then Jalen Suggs went out for the year. They dealt with a lot of injuries. And then they go out and they make this trade for Desmond Bane, who's going to make them much better after this trade. Their core is still together. Their core is still very young. They're still ascending. Paolo Banchero is 21, and he's one of the 15 best basketball players in the world. Franz Wagner is a top 20 basketball player in the world. And, if, and I think that they do, if they work hard this summer, then they're going to come back better players. There's a world where the Orlando Magic are the best team in the Eastern Conference next year. The Bucks have Giannis. They're always going to be a threat because they have him. I don't know how much flexibility they have, but they can go out. They can add something. Obviously no Damian Lillard, but, you hit on one draft pick in the NBA and all of a sudden, your team elevates pretty quickly. Okay. As of right now, I'm sure some of you are like, well, what if they trade Giannis? It doesn't seem like they're going to do that right now. He's going to be a Buck at the start of next year. And that immediately makes the Milwaukee Bucks an issue. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they're going to run it back next year. That's what the Pacers did last year, and they came back a better team. The Cavaliers won 64 games last year. Darius Garland was legitimately hurt against the Pacers. He had surgery on his toe. He's going to miss 6 months, or he's out for the next 6 months. If they're healthy next year, and Evan Mobley, the reigning defensive player of the year, who's only 22 years old, if he comes back better, Cleveland's going to be a bit of a problem for Indiana, potentially. The Celtics, I know Jason Tatum tore his Achilles, and they're going to make some trades, but they're still going to have Jaylen Brown, one of the 20 best players in the world. They're still probably going to have Derek White, a really, really good basketball player. Al Horford is still going to be around. Porzingis probably still going to be around. They're still going to be talented, and they're going to be well coached. The Knicks are going to be good again, just simply because they're talented. Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby. It's 4 really good players. There's a chance that Kevin Durant gets traded to the Miami Heat. If he does, that's going to make them much better. The Pistons were good last year without former 5th overall pick Jaden Ivey, who had a really good 23 games before he broke his femur. If he's a guy, and he looked like a guy before he got hurt, they're going to be a problem that the Pacers now have to figure out. If the 76ers can stay healthy, they're going to be awesome between Joel Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey and whoever they take with the 3rd overall pick. Even if Paul George and Joel Embiid can't stay healthy, they'll be better because they'll have Tyrese Maxey and whoever this 3rd overall pick ends up being. The Eastern Conference is not going to be a cakewalk next year. There are going to be a lot of good teams, and the Pacers are not guaranteed the opportunity to be back in the NBA Finals next year or anytime soon. Just go through history. The Celtics thought they'd be back in the NBA Finals this year. Then the Knicks added Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns, and all of a sudden, the Celtics weren't as good as the Knicks. Then Jason Tatum tore his Achilles, and that's all she wrote. The Dallas Mavericks thought that they'd have a pretty decent chance of getting back to the NBA Finals this year, but they traded Luka. That was the end of their hopes. 2012, the Thunder thought that the core of Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and Serge Ibaka and James Harden, they thought that with that core, they'd be back in the finals pretty soon. All of a sudden, they trade James Harden. They don't get back to the finals for 13 years when all 4 of those guys are gone. It's not a guaranteed thing. Players get hurt, teams get better, and teams get worse. This could be the only NBA Finals opportunity for a lot of these Pacer players. So it's incredibly important. Reggie Miller, Charles Barkley, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Paul, and so on only played in 1 NBA Finals. Nikola Jokic, best player in the league right now, has been for the past 3 or 4 years. Played in 1 NBA Final so far. It's hard to get there once, even harder to get back. That's why the Pacers need to win these next two games. Like, yes, they're going to be a contender next year and all that good stuff. But it's not a given that they're going to get back. The Pacers aren't going to sneak up on anybody this season. Okay, they did this year. They get off to that horrific start. People start to write them off. It's not going to happen again as long as Tyrese Haliburton and the rest of this team is here. Everyone is going to be concerned about playing the Pacers going forward, right? That makes it much tougher to get back to the NBA Finals. So what has to happen for the Pacers to be able to get back next year? And I'm, not trying to jump the gun. I think that they're going to win tomorrow night, and then we're going to have an awesome Game 7 on Sunday. I can't wait. I can't wait. But what has to happen for the Pacers to get back? One, Jarris Walker needs to become a legitimate rotation player next year. Tyrese Haliburton has to come back a stronger player that can go left. If he plays tomorrow night and Sunday, because he said to undergo this MRI here. If he plays tomorrow night and Sunday, you're going to notice that he doesn't go left ever. Okay, and the dude weighs 185 pounds. I'm 5'8". I weigh 175 pounds. There's no reason for me to weigh 10 pounds less than a 6'5" professional athlete. He's got to get in the gym. He's got to get stronger. That way guys like Lou Dort can't move him around as easily. So he's got to come back better. Myles Turner, he has to improve his ability to post up smaller players. Look, they're never going to throw the ball into Myles Turner to post up another center. It's not going to happen. No one does that in the NBA. It's not just a Pacers thing. But if he's got a smaller dude on him, like, he's got to be able to punish them. Benedict Mathurin needs to become a more efficient scorer. Aaron Nesmith needs to get stronger in the offseason. We've seen Jalen Williams bump him off way too easily throughout this series. Pascal Siakam needs to continue to be a 38% three-point shooter again next year. Andrew Nembhard needs to shoot the ball better than 29% from three next year. Pacers are going to be good next year. They're really good this year. But they've got to improve in the offseason whenever it starts. Next year, it's going to be tough sledding for them for multiple reasons. One, winning is hard. It's even harder when people see you coming. Their players have to get better this offseason if they're going to keep the pace with every other team in the Eastern Conference that's going to and has already gotten better. They also need to find a real backup center because Thomas Bryant and Tony Bradley haven't really been impactful at all in these playoffs. Isaiah Jackson, he's going to be back. That'll be nice. But they can do better. Right? I'm sure they'll look to upgrade that backup center spot this offseason, but that's likely going to be the only personnel change we see on this Pacers roster, plus whoever they draft. That means the current Pacers have to get better in this short offseason. Preseason play starts in like 2.5 months. It is a quick turnaround if you play in the finals. Like, it is finals, quick vacation, and then you're back. That's what it is. Like, there is not a lot of time to get better. So whether the Pacers, win on Thursday and win on Sunday, hopefully that's what happens. They're plus 1,000 to do that. It's a quick turnaround from the end of the finals to next season, and hopefully we see these guys take those 2 months or 2.5 months, however long it is, really seriously. I'm sure they will, because it seems like the Pacers have a lot of adults that are grown up and know how to be professionals. And I talked a little bit in there about the importance of a backup center, because I think it's vital to the Pacers and their success next season. There's been a lot of talk about Myles Turner. He hasn't played very well in these finals. Is he bleeding money? Is he worth $30 million a year? All those questions are flying. I've got the answer for you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code TURBO to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code TURBO for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code TURBO for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket, covering a lot of ground pretty quickly today. Caitlin Clark, the Fever, throwing hands with the Connecticut Sun last night. The Connecticut Sun are a bad team. That's what bad teams do, right? It's like, we're not going to win the game, so let's fight a little bit. Let's scrap. And they lost both the fight and the game. And then, we talked a little bit of Pacers, the importance of winning it all this year, because you're just never guaranteed to get back. And I talked a little bit at the end there about how the Pacers can get better going into next year. And the center position, it's caused quite the stir here in Indianapolis. Myles Turner, due for a payday, somewhere probably around $30 million a year. And there are questions about him. I don't know how to feel about Myles Turner, in this playoff run. There's been some good series in these playoffs. He's had some bad series. He's had some good moments. He's had some bad moments. He's not shooting the ball very well right now. He's never been a good rebounder. He's a good but not great rim protector. And I think he's like a lot of other centers in the NBA. Playing center in the NBA is harder than it's ever been. You have to be able to guard on the perimeter. Most guys that are 7 feet tall don't have that ability. You have to have the ability to shoot the basketball. You have to be able to protect the rim, and you have to be able to switch and defend guards. Like, these men are huge, and they're being asked to do things that most huge men cannot do. I think there's 5 centers in the NBA who can legitimately play in every playoff series. That's it. There's only 5. And we see centers get played out of playoff series all the time. Rudy Gobert is a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year winner. He can't stay on the floor in some of these playoff series because he can't do everything that a center is asked to do in the NBA in this day and age. Brook Lopez got played off the floor against the Pacers this year. He started game 1, played 35 minutes. Game 2, he played 15 minutes. He got played off the floor against the Pacers. Jared Allen, a guy who makes $30 million a year, the same amount of money that Myles Turner is asking for. Jared Allen got played off the floor against the Pacers. Chet Holmgren, former number 2 overall pick, is struggling in this series against the Indiana Pacers. Jalen Duren, former lottery pick of the Detroit Pistons, couldn't stay on the floor against the Knicks. Wendell Carter Jr. was like the 4th overall pick the year that he got drafted. Yeah, couldn't stay on the floor against the Boston Celtics. Zach Edey got played off the floor against the Thunder. It is normal for NBA centers to struggle in the playoffs. Most of them can't play in every series throughout the NBA playoffs. There's 5 who can. Nikola Jokic, Victor Wembanyama, Bam Adebayo, Evan Mobley, Karl Anthony Towns. Those are the only centers in the NBA who can play in every series. And guess what? Most of them are not perfect. Nikola Jokic and Karl Anthony Towns, they only play in every series because they are so offensively gifted. But they're not perfect. Teams pick on Nikola Jokic defensively all the time. The Pacers, when they played against the New York Knicks, what did they do when Karl Anthony Towns was on the floor? They went at him every chance they got. Bam Adebayo, he only plays in every series because of his defensive versatility. He's not a very good offensive player. He can't step out and make a three. It's like, cool, man. You can hit like a 17-foot jumper. That's great. And you're like a halfway decent passer. That's all that he is. Like, he's not posting up smaller players. He's not doing anything like that. But he gets paid a lot of money because of his defense. Okay, center in the NBA is like running back in the NFL. You have to do it by committee. There's a finite number of running backs in the NFL that are legitimate 3-down backs that can run between the tackles, have the speed to bust a big one, have the size and strength to run it on the goal line, and have the hands to catch the ball out of the backfield, and also have the ability to pick up the blitz in pass protection. Because of that, NFL teams have multiple running backs. Center in the NBA should be treated the exact same way. There are 2 perfect centers in the NBA that check every box. They can shoot it from the outside. They can roll to the basket. They can play make off the roll to the basket. They can protect the rim. They rebound. They can defend the screen and roll. If they get switched onto a guard, they can hold their own and survive. There's 2. It's Victor Wembanyama, the alien, and Evan Mobley. Those are the only centers in the NBA that can do everything on the list of things that centers are asked to do. And Evan Mobley barely passes inspection on that. Barely passes inspection. There's one perfect center in the NBA who can legitimately do all those things well. He's in San Antonio. He's not coming to Indianapolis. Promise. You have to do the center position by committee. With every other team in the NBA, that is what they're doing. And they are basing what they need in their center based off of what they have with their power forward. Okay, like you have to pick what you want, and it depends on what your power forward does well. Pascal Siakam is an interior scorer who likes to post up and do those things, who's a good rebound. He was the 7th best rebounding power forward in the NBA this year. Okay, he likes to drive and get to the rim. What he does well, Myles Turner does not do well. And what Myles Turner does well, Pascal Siakam doesn't do well. Myles Turner is fantastic at stepping out onto the perimeter and knocking down threes. He's an excellent screener. Okay, that is not Pascal Siakam's strength. Myles Turner is a good, not great, but he's a good rim protector. Pascal Siakam, pretty average in that department. They complement each other well. The Pacers don't need to get rid of Myles Turner. They need to bring him back, pay him the $30 million a year if you go through his numbers compared to a lot of other centers in the NBA. He's, probably one of the 10 best centers in the league, probably closer to 10 than he is to 1. But when you look at the scoring and the shooting, I get it. He's not a good rebounder, but he protects the rim well. What the Pacers need is a backup center that gives them legitimate options. That is what they need. Thomas Bryant is an undersized center that can kind of make threes. He can't really rebound. He can't protect the rim. He's not a guy who gives you a different look. Tony Bradley is just a big body who can kind of rebound and is a total zero on offense. What the Pacers need, they need to go find a cheap DeAndre Drummond type center. By the way, DeAndre Drummond, only 33 years old. He will be a free agent this offseason. They need to go find a cheap DeAndre Drummond type center who can rebound in case you need that. Myles Turner is going to get his money because there's just not very many good centers in the NBA. So what the Pacers need to do is they need to go find a center who can really rebound. That way you have a different look to throw at teams. Okay, that is what you need. Because right now, Isaiah Jackson, he's going to come back and he gives them a different look. He's 6'9", super athletic. Because he's super athletic, he can defend the rim. He can screen and roll. Not very good playmaking off the roll, but he's like 24. Like, he should hopefully continue to get better. He can play above the rim, right? He gives you this athletic rim running center that you can throw lobs to, and he can block shots. And because he's so athletic, he can kind of play on the perimeter a little bit on the defensive end of the floor. He gives you something that Myles Turner does not. He gives teams a completely different look, and he's a solid rebounder as well. Pacers, like, they're going to have room for a third center because I'm just going to assume that they're not going to bring Thomas Bryant and Tony Bradley back. So, like, they have an opening for a third center on their roster. A player like Paul Reed would be a good option for the Pacers. Okay, he is. He has this, really good ability to rebound the basketball. Paul Reed is currently the backup center in Detroit, right? He played good minutes in the playoffs this year. He's very physical. He's a very good rebounder. He's set to be an unrestricted free agent this offseason, and he would give the Pacers a different look. And that's what they need. Okay, center in the NBA has to be done by committee now because of everything that these guys are asked to do. It's very difficult. There's only 2 in the NBA. It's very difficult to find a center who can do everything that is now asked of these 7-foot guys. Like, I don't think it's a major indictment on Myles Turner that he can't, switch on the perimeter. I don't think it's an indictment that he can't post up other bigs because, let's be honest, there's like 3 other bigs in the NBA who can, like, legitimately post up. It's Karl Anthony Towns, Nikola Jokic, and Joel Embiid. Those are the only 3 guys who consistently put their back to the basket. Richard asking about Clint Capella. I don't think he'd be bad. Yeah, he's a little bit older. I think that's kind of the thing that I like about Paul Reed. Paul Reed's like 27. Capella's in his early 30s, but he is at a point in his career where he probably needs to be a backup center. And Richard, like, you're exactly right. Like that guy can rebound and he can set good screens and he can do all those things. So that wouldn't be a bad option either. But that's really what the Pacers need. The Pacers don't need to get rid of Myles Turner. They need to pay him the money because there's just not very many good centers in the NBA. And they need to bring in another backup who can just give the Pacers a slightly different look. Because that's really what you want. Like, when you look at the best teams in the NBA in the playoffs, the teams that win multiple rounds are the teams who can play in different styles. Like, a large part of why the Pacers are at this point is because they can win hard-fought, tough defensive games because they improved on the defensive side of the basketball. They can win games by scoring 70 points in the paint. The Pacers can win games by shooting 45% from 3 and generating a ton of open looks. Like, they can win in multiple ways, and having different centers, I think, opens up even more options for the Pacers to find different ways to win tough games in, May, June, and July. No, we're still in June. May and June. My bad. So that's what they need. Pay Myles Turner and then go find a cheap center that can really rebound and gives you a slightly different look. Okay, speaking of looks, by the way, Zach Pereles set to join the show at 11:20, where we'll talk a lot about the Pacers. But the Pacers are set to take a look at Haliburton's calf. He had an MRI. I'm going to talk about that a little bit when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
It may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Tickets, from the head of there. Subscribe, hop in the chat, be part of the conversation. Maybe you're watching on X, __ Jonathan Smith. To watch the show there, you can follow me there as well. Maybe you're listening on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Tyrese Haliburton had an MRI on his calf. I don't think this needs to be a long monologue. I think this is a really simple thing. If he doesn't play, then the Pacers will lose on Thursday night. It's that simple. They have to have him. And I get it. We love TJ McConnell, and no Haliburton means more TJ McConnell. But I look, TJ McConnell's not doing what he did in Game 5 again. Like, it's not going to happen, even though it does kind of feel like the Thunder don't have much of a solution for him, because they're just kind of like, hey, we have 3 guys in the paint. And TJ McConnell's like, I don't really care. I'm going to get in here anyway, and I'm probably going to score. I'm probably going to hit some floater over your big. By the way, if you put a big on me, I will go by him, and I will score at the rim. Oh, you're going to put a small on me. Well, I'm going to figure out how to get in there anyway. I'm going to work the baseline like I'm Steve Nash and just kind of find a way to score. Okay, so, but with that being said, they need Haliburton. They turn the ball over too much when he doesn't have the basketball. You know why the Pacers turned the ball over 23 times in Game 5? Because they allowed Andrew Nembhard to initiate a lot of the offense. And that's not a knock on Nembhard. Like, he only had 4 of the 23 total turnovers. But when Haliburton has the basketball and he's running the offense, it's just smoother. Everything just flows a little bit better. That makes the passes easier. And then all of a sudden, you've got 30 assists and only 12 turnovers against the best defense in the NBA. We saw the same thing happen in Game 1. Pacers opened the series by not having Haliburton initiate a lot of the offense. They would start him off the ball. And Andrew Nembhard ran a lot of the offense. What was the other game where the Pacers turned the ball over way too much? It was Game 1. So they have to have him, because if they don't have him, they're going to turn the basketball over way too much. So Haliburton, MRI on his calf. Carlisle said today over on the other station that they're taking it slow. Sounds like he's going to be a game-time decision. They've got a plan for if he plays. They've got a plan for if he doesn't play. I'm telling you right now, he's playing. He played the entire second half. He looked better in the second half than he did in the first half. Right about 15 minutes before game time, they're going to stick a needle in him, and they're going to jack him up on some stuff, and he's going to be ready to go, because this is the NBA Finals. So I'm expecting for him to play. We'll see how good or how bad he looks. And he is not the only young star in Indianapolis dealing with an injury. Look, you can't talk about injuries. You can't talk about injuries on professional sports teams in Indiana without bringing up the one and only Anthony Richardson. I haven't talked Colts much because there hasn't been a ton going on, and the Pacers have been rolling, and I think we would all agree that the Pacers are much more interesting right now than this Colts team that seems to be set up to go 8-9, 9-8, somewhere around that number of wins and losses again. But Anthony Richardson hurt his shoulder, right? He had to go back, and the same shoulder he hurt previously, and non-contact injury, like that's always scary. But he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. In fact, the competition is still very much in play. Here is Ian Rappaport last week talking about the injury to Anthony Richardson's shoulder and, what the doctor had to say when he went back for that second opinion.
Yeah, definitely one of the more fun quarterback competitions of training camp. And I do expect both of these quarterbacks to be out there very early in training camp. As far as Anthony Richardson, from what I understand, obviously you mentioned it, had a right shoulder injury, somewhat similar injury to what he had before. Got it checked out. Got a second opinion from Dr. Neil Alatras, one of the more respected voices in the medical community in the NFL. Just rest and recuperation, really just rest or rehab, no surgery. He is expected to be fine by training camp. This is a very good thing for the Colts, because what they want is health and a real competition at quarterback, and it sounds like they'll get it.
Ian Rappaport right there, just giving a quick little update on Anthony Richardson. That came out last week. It's a little bit older. But big news here, Anthony Richardson is going to be back in time for training camp. And they're going to have a real quarterback competition because he's going to be healthy, at least to start training camp. We'll see how he is at the end of training camp. But this is a good thing. And I could talk about ceiling for 15 minutes, but I'm not going to do that because you've all heard me say that before. Oh, the ceiling of the offense with Anthony Richardson, so much higher than it is with Daniel Jones. So it's like, well, Jonathan, if you're not going to talk about that, you're going to talk about how competition makes you better? No, I will refer you to Chris Ballard on that, because Chris Ballard knows all about competition all of a sudden. I want to talk about how pressure makes diamonds. Not really. That's dumb. It's almost as dumb as talking about competition. I want to talk about the Shane Steichen offense and this crystal clear speaking of diamonds, crystal clear belief that he has. And if you go back last year and if you listen to the press conferences before the season, during the season, after the season, he preached about big plays. We need big plays. Gotta make big plays here in the NFL. You need those chunk plays, all that kind of stuff. And maybe he was saying that to protect Anthony Richardson because he knew that that's all that Anthony Richardson was really capable of creating. Either way, there's a lot of truth in what he was saying. It's hard to sustain a 12-play, 75-yard drive and score a touchdown. You need a chunk play in there somewhere. You need a 15-yard reception or a 21-yard run. You need something like that because it's just hard to be consistent over the course of a 12-play drive. Okay, and with the Colts last year, there wasn't enough consistency. It was chunk play or bust. It was, we're going to hit Alec Pierce over the top for a 40-yard completion, or we're going to go 3 and out. That's what it was for the Colts last year with Anthony Richardson as their quarterback. If Daniel Jones is your quarterback, it quickly turns into check down or bust. So if it's Anthony Richardson, it's chunk play or bust. If it's Daniel Jones, then it's check down or bust. Those are the two options that the Indianapolis Colts, Chris Ballard, and all of his genius has presented Shane Steichen with. Okay, and I'm very intrigued to see which option he ends up going with. With Anthony Richardson as your quarterback, it becomes much tougher to play complementary football because of his inability to sustain drives. Like, I think the Colts had like one long drive last year. It was that game-winning drive against New England. It was like 19 plays, 64 yards. Anthony Richardson scrambling, just trying to figure it out. It was really impressive, just kind of thinking back on it. Outside of that, though, it was a lot of, the Colts are either on the field for 2 minutes and they scored, or they went 3 and out and they were on the field for like 45 seconds worth of game time, and then you would punt. Tough. It's really tough to win that way because your defense is going to be tired late, makes life tougher on your defense, and the Colts seem to lose time of possession in every game played last year. And look, it's more than just about the quarterback play because the Colts have committed to the run more. Sure, right? Like there's other ways to kind of solve that issue, but ultimately, if you want to win time of possession, you've got to win third down. Okay? The best teams in the NFL win third down on both sides of the football, and they score touchdowns in the red zone on offense, and they give up field goals in the red zone on defense. Like if you want 4 basic numbers to look at how often they convert on third down, look at how often they stop teams on third down, look how often they score touchdowns in the red zone versus how often they kick field goals in the red zone. With Daniel Jones as your quarterback, you're limiting a lot of explosive play. You're eliminating a lot of explosive plays. You're going to move the ball 4 or 5 yards at a time. And it's tough to win that way too because it's hard to sustain long drives in the NFL. Like you're going to make a mistake at some point. Maybe it's Daniel Jones. It's like 2nd and 8, and they're out there and they're set to run the football, but then he checks to a pass and he misreads something, and all of a sudden it's incomplete, and now it's 3rd and 8. And Daniel Jones is like, gosh, dang it, I have to throw the ball further than 2 yards down the field. Gee golly, what am I going to do? Maybe, Bernard Raymond gets beat off the edge and he gives up a sack, and all of a sudden, it's 2nd and 17. Maybe you have a negative running play. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Max Crosby, when the Colts play the Raiders this year, maybe he wins off the edge and he, tackles Jonathan Taylor for a 3-yard loss, and all of a sudden it's 2nd and 13. Something bad happens on every drive. It does. Whether you want it to or not. And part of that is because the Colts are going to make mistakes because football is a tough sport. And the other part of it is that the defense is going to make plays because the other guys are getting paid as well. And what the Colts really need is a mashup of Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. Which sounds terrible because these are two of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. But you need the big play ability of Anthony Richardson. And you need the accuracy and the patience of Daniel Jones. And going into training camp, I think that the competition edge in terms of showing the thing that they haven't shown favors Anthony Richardson a little bit. If Anthony Richardson can just find a way to be fine with throwing the ball to the check down more, then he will win the job. If he can just find a way to not be as aggressive as he was last year. He didn't hit the check down hardly at all last year. He was letting that thing fly every chance he got. If he threw the ball to the check down once every 10 snaps, you know what would happen? His completion percentage would go up. And all of a sudden, he'd be completing like 60% of his passes. And we'd all be like, oh, look at that. He's gotten so much more accurate. Whoever he worked with this summer was amazing. When in reality, that probably wouldn't be true. He just opted to complete the easier passes a little bit more often. I think he has a leg up in the competition over Daniel Jones because that is easier to learn than all of a sudden having to be a gunslinger who pushes the ball down the field. I think it is easier to tone somebody back, like we saw that with Patrick Mahomes, right? You know, he comes out those first couple of years, and it's Tyreek Hill. You run as fast as you can. I'm going to throw it as far as I can. Travis Kelce, you run this 15-yard dig over the middle, and I'm going to rear back, and I'm going to sling it in there, and it's going to be wonderful. And then defenses were like, okay, no more of that. Let's play too high. And so, you know, defenses start playing too high. And Patrick Mahomes is kind of forcing the ball a little bit too much. And eventually he learns, you know what? I have to calm down. I have to take what the defense gives me. And I realize I'm comparing Patrick Mahomes to Anthony Richardson, and that's not fair to either one of them. It's also kind of ridiculous because obviously Richardson, nowhere near as good as Patrick Mahomes. But my example still stands of it's easier to bring a guy back a little bit as opposed to Daniel Jones. Like Kirk Cousins, I think is pretty similar to Daniel Jones. Neither guy throws the ball past the sticks. It's very safe. And it's really hard to get a guy to all of a sudden be like, all right, man, like I need you to be more aggressive. I need you to raise your risk a little bit. I think it is much harder to do that than to get a young quarterback who is still very teachable and still pretty raw. I think it's much tougher to get an older quarterback, because that's what Daniel Jones is at this point. Like, he's a legitimate veteran. I think it's tougher to get a guy like that to raise his level of risk as opposed to getting a young quarterback going into their third year, a young quarterback who hasn't had like any success. I think it's much easier to get that guy to tone it down a little bit than it is to get a Daniel Jones to raise the level of risk. Now, I am excited that we're going to have a real quarterback competition because both of these quarterbacks aren't very good. And, you know, it's going to be so bad, I don't think anyone's going to be able to look away from it. And I hope that Anthony Richardson wins the job. And we'll see how the Colts look when the preseason rolls around here in about 2 months or so. Like, we're really not that far from football. We're like 12 Sundays away until week 1 of the NFL season. So it's not far. It's just around the corner. I'm going to talk to Zach Pereles about that a little bit coming up here in about 25 minutes. But when we come back here in about 5 minutes, we're going to talk, you know, fever and all the fights last night and all that other bull crap here in about, 4.5 minutes.
do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're listening on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps, or maybe you're watching on X, __ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow and watch the show there. I would recommend just not watching The Fever anymore. It's just kind of rinse and repeat. It's just the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing that we got last year. I'm really kind of tired of it. It's just the exact same talking points time and time again. Something happens. The Fever win. Everyone's excited. But we can't be excited because someone decided to hit Caitlin Clark in the face, and then someone decided to knock her over. And then it becomes this thing about like, hey, I don't think that her teammates did a good job of standing up for her. And then it's just on and on and on. And then you got people like, they don't like her because she's white. And then you got other people like, they don't like her because she's better than them. And it's just annoying. And I'm really sick of it. I am. All right. But I do radio in Indianapolis, so I have to talk about it. Man. The women of the WNBA don't like Caitlin Clark because she's better than them, and for all of the political reasons that people like to list whenever they talk about this. I really think it's more of they don't like her because she's better than them. And they don't like her because she's more popular than them. She is the third most popular basketball player, men or women, in the world. It's LeBron James, it's Steph Curry, and then it's her. And soon, both of those guys are going to retire. And she will be the most popular basketball athlete in the world. And, women are petty. Women get jealous. Men do too, but not like women. And they don't like that. And so they go at her time and time again. It doesn't help that Caitlin Clark talks a lot of trash. Like there's one clip, the girl, if you haven't seen it, she gets hit in the face, and then some other girl bumps her, and then another woman comes over and completely knocks her over, and Lexi Hull kind of gets in the middle of it, and then, the other three Fever players just kind of stand around or whatever. No one gets ejected. The referees had an opportunity to just kind of squash it, and they didn't. So no one gets ejected. Caitlin Clark gets a technical foul for some reason. That didn't make any sense. And we're going to come back to the officiating here in a minute. And so, all that is happening. And all this time, people are going to be on Caitlin Clark's side because she's Caitlin Clark and because she's really popular and because people love her and all this kind of stuff. But Caitlin Clark runs her mouth quite a bit. It's part of it. I am pro talk trash. I am. Like, I think in any basketball setting, guys should talk trash. Women too. Let me be inclusive over here. Like run your mouth. Like that is one of the best things about basketball. Like you were on the floor with someone for 8 consecutive game minutes or however long your time on the floor is. And like you're not leaving each other. Like you're by each other's side. And so you can sit there and you can talk and talk and talk. But sometimes when you talk trash, you get hit in the face and then you get knocked over. It is part of it. It is. And so Caitlin Clark is a bit of an instigator. So I'm not going to sit here and treat her like she's the victim, even though what the Connecticut Sun did was completely and totally wrong. But if you're going to talk trash, knowing that they already don't like you, be prepared for them to come at you a little bit. And they did. That's what the Connecticut Sun did. They came at her. And at the end of the game, things got out of hand. So they don't throw anyone out after the whole thing with Caitlin Clark in the first half or whatever. And then later, the Connecticut Sun have this breakaway layup. And they're about to lay it in. And Sophie Cunningham is like, absolutely not. And she just tackles her. Just tackles her down to the ground. And then we have another scuffle. And I appreciate Sophie Cunningham committing that hard foul. None of that happens, though, if they eject someone the first time that they did that to Caitlin Clark. Okay, like the referees of the WNBA, ever since Caitlin Clark showed up, have done just a pitiful job of controlling games. They have not controlled a single game here. Like things get out of hand way too quickly. I think the league is too physical. It is. Like, it is significantly more physical than the NBA. The WNBA has to clean it up a little bit. And not just for Caitlin Clark. Like, this happens all the time in the WNBA. Girls get hit in the face. There's little scuffles like this consistently. And so the WNBA has to do a better job of just getting out in front of it and keeping, these women from going at each other all the time. Okay? So Sophie Cunningham, I appreciate the hard foul late. It never should have happened, though. The referee should have taken control of the game much earlier than they did. Also, Sophie, like, I get it. You weren't on the floor when Caitlin got knocked over or whatever, but, like, let's do it earlier. Like, let's go. Also, I do appreciate Sophie Cunningham kind of taking on that James Johnson role. Fun fact about Sophie Cunningham, learned this last night. She's the youngest person in the history of the state of Missouri to earn a black belt in whatever form of martial arts that she did. I read that last night. Is it true? I don't know. Saw it on Twitter, though, so it must be. And so I appreciate that the Fever have players like her to kind of take care of some of that stuff. But, it shouldn't have happened because the referee should have taken control of the game. But, hey, that's neither here nor there. Anyway, Zach Pereles joining the show here in about 13 minutes. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. The Pacers got to win the NBA Finals tonight. Or this year, excuse me. Because it's not a guarantee that they're going to get back. Tyrese Haliburton's 25 years old. Pascal Siakam's 31. Everyone else is younger than Pascal. The Pacers are going to re-sign Myles Turner this offseason, and they're going to have everyone on this current NBA Finals team under contract again for next season. And you're going to hear Indiana Pacer fans say that they'll be back in the NBA Finals soon. It's not necessarily true because things happen. Something happened over the weekend. The Orlando Magic made a trade for Desmond Bane. They're going to be much better after that trade. He is exactly what they need. The Magic were the worst three-point shooting team in the league. Desmond Bane, a guy who shot 39% from three last year. He can handle the basketball a little bit as well. All that kind of stuff. Okay, their core, still young, still together. Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, two of the younger players in the league that are top 20 players in the world. Paolo Banchero's closer to 10 than he is to 20. Okay, like there's a world next year where the Orlando Magic are a 3 seed or a top 3 seed. They were that good to start the year. The issue is Paolo Banchero got hurt, missed a bunch of time right before he came back. Franz Wagner got hurt. He missed a bunch of time. And then right before he came back, Jalen Suggs got hurt, and he missed the rest of the year. The Magic are going to be much better next year than they were this year. The Bucks are going to have Giannis. They're always going to be a threat when they have him because he's the best player in the conference. As of right now, it doesn't seem like the Bucks are going to trade him. He's going to be a Milwaukee Buck, at least at the start of next season, and that immediately makes the Bucks a bit of an issue. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they're going to run it back next year. It's what the Pacers did, and the Pacers got better. The Cavaliers won 64 games last year. When they played the Pacers in the playoffs, Darius Garland was legitimately hurt against this Pacers team, right? He had surgery on the toe in the offseason. If they're healthy next year, and Evan Mobley, only like 23 years old, if he comes back better, they're going to be a bit of a problem for the Indiana Pacers. The Celtics are still going to be good. They're going to make some trades, but they're still going to have Jaylen Brown. I know Jason Tatum tore his Achilles, but they're still going to have good players. They're going to be well coached. The Knicks are going to be good again because they're going to be talented. Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby. I don't think that those four players are going anywhere. Okay, so like they're going to be good just because they're more talented. Maybe they hire a head coach that unlocks something for them, and all of a sudden they're a better offensive team. Who knows? There's a chance that Kevin Durant gets traded to the Miami Heat. That'll make the Miami Heat a much more viable team. The Pistons were good last year. If Jaden Ivey, former number 5 overall pick, if he turns into a guy, and he looked like one before he got hurt, then there'll be a problem for the Pacers to figure out. The 76ers are wildly talented. They were just incredibly hurt this year. And they can stay healthy. Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, the number 3 overall pick, whoever they end up taking, there's a chance that they're going to be better next year, even if Paul George and Joel Embiid can't stay healthy. Like they're going to add some talent in the NBA draft. Okay, the Eastern Conference, it's not going to be a cakewalk this next year. There are going to be a lot of good teams. The Pacers aren't guaranteed to get back to the NBA Finals next year or anytime soon. The Celtics thought that they'd be back in the NBA Finals this year. Then the Knicks added Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns, and all of a sudden, the Celtics weren't as good as the Knicks. I understand that Jason Tatum got hurt, but they were going to go down 3-1 before that happened. Then Jason Tatum tears his Achilles, and then that was all she wrote for the Boston Celtics and their hopes of repeating. The Dallas Mavericks thought that they would have a chance to get back to the NBA Finals this year, but Nico Harrison traded Luka Doncic. With that being said, I do not expect for Kevin Pritchard to trade Tyrese Haliburton. But that was the end of their hopes. In 2012, the Thunder thought that the core of Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka, and James Harden would take them back to the finals relatively quickly. Didn't happen. They got back to the finals 13 years later when none of those 4 players were on the roster anymore. It's not a guaranteed thing. Players get hurt, teams get better, teams get worse. This could be the only NBA Finals opportunity for a lot of these Pacer players. Reggie Miller only got to 1. Charles Barkley only got to 1. Giannis has only gotten to 1. Chris Paul has only gotten to 1. Nikola Jokic, the guy who's been the best player in the league for the last 4 years, he's only played in 1 NBA Finals. It's hard to get there once, even tougher to get back again. That's why the Pacers need to win these next 2 games. It needs to happen, and they can do it. Obviously, Haliburton has to be healthy for that to happen, but if he is, they can do it. Sure, they're going to be a contender next year, but it's not a given that they'll be back. The Pacers' road to the NBA Finals next year will be significantly tougher because they're not going to sneak up on anybody. That's what they did this year, right? No one really respected them because their path to the Eastern Conference Finals last year was made easier by some injuries, right? They get off to that horrific start. They're 10-15. People are writing them off. And that's not going to happen again as long as they have Haliburton and the majority of the guys on this roster. Everyone is going to be much more concerned about playing the Pacers going forward. And that makes it so much tougher to get back to the NBA Finals. So in order for them to get back next year and to improve, along with, all the other teams in the Eastern Conference that have gotten better, Jarris Walker has to become a rotation player next year. Tyrese Haliburton, he's got to get stronger in the offseason. He's got to learn how to use his left hand. Myles Turner has to improve his ability to post up smaller players. Benedict Mathurin has to become a more efficient scorer. Aaron Nesmith needs to put on a little bit of weight. Jalen Williams has bumped him off way too easily in this series. Pascal Siakam needs to continue to be a 38% three-point shooter next year. Andrew Nembhard needs to shoot better than 29% from 3 next year. Okay, the Pacers are a good basketball team, but they've got to improve in the offseason whenever it starts. Because next year it's going to be much tougher sledding for them, not only because winning is hard, but it becomes even more difficult when people see you coming. Okay, their players have to get better in this shortened offseason if they're going to keep the pace with every other team in the Eastern Conference that's going to get better. They also need to find a real backup center because Thomas Bryant and Tony Bradley haven't been impactful enough in these playoffs. Okay, Isaiah Jackson, he's going to be back. That'll be nice. But they could do better than that. They could, okay? And I'm sure that they're going to look to upgrade that backup center spot this offseason, but that's likely going to be the only personnel change that we see on this Pacers roster going into next year. That means that in a significantly shorter offseason, the current Pacer players are going to have to find a way to get better. Like the time off that they have isn't very much. They've got 2 months. It's a very quick turnaround before you're back and you're doing the training camp stuff and you're, doing, preseason basketball and summer league's not that far away. The draft's on Wednesday. The NBA draft is not far away. It's a quick turnaround. There's just not a ton of time to get better. So this offseason for the Pacers, go on vacation and then figure it out because everyone else is getting better right now while you're still playing. Teams are making trades. Players are working with trainers, right? It's just part of the process. So hopefully the Pacers hit this offseason. And look, they've got real pros. They're going to come back better because that's what real pros do. That's what they do. So speaking of getting better, the show's only getting better. Zach Pereles of CBS Sports. He's going to join the show coming up here at 11:20, where we're going to continue to talk about the NBA Finals. We may talk a little bit about the upcoming NFL season here as well. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of awesome stuff going on in the sports world right now. One of the non-awesome things is all the drama in the WNBA. I'm really sick of it. I'm done caring about all these stupid fights. WNBA, please step in and make the officiating better. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Zach Pereles of CBS Sports joins the show.
Switch to T-Mobile. Get a new The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, as I'm now joined by the one and only Zach Pereles of CBSSports.com, where he does a great job writing about the NFL. He's got a newsletter as well that is excellent, covering everything going on in the sports world. Zach, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm great. I'm good. Happy to be here and excited to talk some hoops.
Me too. Actual hoops, not Caitlin Clark being assaulted, you know?
Right.
Did you see that last night?
I did. And I appreciated her saying, can we actually just talk about the basketball afterward?
Yeah, well, they opened with, all the questions about what happened, and Stephanie White stepped in and she was like, I got this. And then she just ripped the officials for a minute. And that's really the issue. Like, I think that the WNBA needs to do a better job of calling fouls and ejecting people and doing all that stuff. But anyway, let's talk about basketball. Obviously, Game 6 tomorrow night here in Indianapolis. Can the Pacers win Game 6 without Tyrese Haliburton?
They can. It gets a lot harder, though. Just TJ McConnell's been awesome, but you're asking a lot out of him. You're going to ask a lot out of whoever backs him up in the backcourt. It just becomes a tall task.
It does. And this is just kind of the observation that I made. Game 1, I thought that the Pacers had Andrew Nembhard initiate a lot of the offense just to kind of take some of the pressure off of Haliburton being harassed by Lou Dort for 40 minutes a night. And I thought in Game 5, they did the same thing. And the Pacers' 2 highest turnover games have come when Haliburton has initiated the offense less often. And I don't know how they avoid turnovers without him in the game. What do you think are the other areas where the Pacers would struggle without him?
Yeah, I think the big thing that Tyrese Haliburton does so well is he is such a good passer, like from areas in the lane. And he's obviously like a big guard, which TJ McConnell is not. So that's a big thing. Like his ability to get the ball moving, get into the lane a little bit and kick it out. It's obviously really hard against this Thunder defense, but that's the thing that I think of the most when I think about Tyrese Haliburton. Obviously, the scoring has really been good at times, and that's not his primary thing, though. The times when the Pacers are the best are obviously when he's shooting the ball well, but when he is really directing that 5-out offense. And to me, it's just not the same with TJ McConnell. And in fact, you can't really have a 5-out offense because TJ McConnell, I know he's actually hit a 3 here or there, but he's not a guy that is really like a threat from out there. And so it automatically becomes kind of a 4-out offense with a smaller point guard who's not quite as much of a shooting threat.
It works well for him, though. He's got all that room to operate, and he runs the baseline like no one else. My big thing, like I would have less questions about McConnell and significantly more questions about Andrew Nembhard, once again joined by Zach Pereles of CBSSports.com. And because he's like, Game 1, Andrew Nembhard was awesome. I was like, that's important because he's going to have to be good for them to win this series. After that, he's really struggled offensively. What do you think his role would look like if Haliburton was to not play tomorrow night?
Yeah, I think that you see him more on ball, as we mentioned. I think that you're right. Like the biggest thing about missing a star or missing any player is that it's not part of the thing that's tough is missing that player. But the other thing is who now has to play more with him out. So obviously McConnell would play more, and you're right, Andrew Nembhard would play more. And it's just, you don't realize how much you miss a guy until you have to dig in one layer deeper into your depth. And Indiana has great depth, and that's a huge reason they're here. But you're right. It's really tough on Andrew Nembhard to have to face on-ball defense for an extended stretch. He's not quite the distributor that McConnell, obviously that Haliburton is, but that McConnell is. He's just not quite as comfortable with the ball in his hands. And also that extra effort that he has to exert on offense impacts his defense. I think he's a terrific defender and an extremely important defender, but this series has been tough. It's been physical. Both teams will extend their pressure, and when you're on the ball all the time, offensively and defensively, that is a huge ask.
It is. I think we'd see a lot more of Benedict Mathurin as well. I think we'd see a significant more amount of him. Just from an offensive creation standpoint, I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen more of him in the series in general, just because, like Siakam can kind of get a shot whenever he wants, and he's really the only matchup problem that the Thunder have. But if Haliburton doesn't play tomorrow night, I think we'll see a lot more of Mathurin as well, which doesn't excite me. Outside of Game 3, it's been tough sledding for him as well.
Yep. You saw in Game 3, Benedict Mathurin, it's interesting. He kind of adds an element that no one else, maybe, I think, on either bench adds in terms of just like pure aggression, getting to the basket. Like, he had 6 offensive rebounds. I was going through the numbers earlier. 6 offensive rebounds in Game 5. So even though he wasn't shooting it well, he really attacked the glass and created some extra possessions for Indiana. So, yeah, he was terrific in Game 3. And you saw, like, he is one of few guys off the bench in the NBA, but especially in this series, that is just like, hey, go get me something at the rim. Go get your own sort of thing. And that's not really how Indiana plays, but it is, when it's working well, it's another dimension. It's kind of one of these things where when Benedict Mathurin's going well and he's running hot like he was in Game 3, you say, wow, Indiana has all these shooters and they move the ball so well. And they have this guy who's just a relentless downhill driver. And then when it's going poorly, you're like, this guy doesn't really seem like a fit to everything else that's going on here. So I do agree you'll see a lot of Benedict Mathurin. And yeah, he doesn't have to be as good as Game 3. That's obviously an outlier, but can he be as good as he was, between Game 3, Game 2, he was pretty solid. Like, can he be somewhere in that range where he's just okay? He can, hit some shots and provide some of that aggression, because you see a lot of Indiana's players who try to put the ball on the floor and get into the teeth of that defense. They really have trouble because it's so physical and so strong. There's so much length. They're so aggressive at the ball. Benedict Mathurin is a really strong guy who can hold up as a driver physically, but he's got to be a little bit more under control. He's got to finish these opportunities he gets at the rim, because he didn't in Game 5, and he was really quiet in Game 4. So it's going to be an interesting one. You look at his minutes; he's topped out at 22 minutes a game, and even if Tyrese Haliburton is able to play, I do wonder if Benedict Mathurin, especially with your backs against the wall, you say, hey, like, get in there and let it rip, be smart, try to play under control, but you kind of provide a dynamic that not a whole lot of other players on this team do.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBSSports.com. Follow him on X at Zach_Pereles. He has an excellent newsletter that you should go and subscribe to as well. Totally agree on the Mathurin stuff. He just gives them a different look. There is, I don't want to call it a bright side if Haliburton doesn't play, because obviously, like, that's not a good thing. But I thought Game 5 was the best job the Pacers had done of consistently getting Pascal Siakam involved. Because, look, like, when you play against the Thunder can defend everybody, but they don't really have a great defender for a 6'8" wing. Because, like, they don't have, like, anyone of that size on their roster. And so, like, we've really seen Siakam be problematic for this Thunder defense. And I do think that if you want any, like, this is a good thing about Haliburton potentially not playing, is Pascal Siakam is going to be super involved. He was really good in Game 5 because he was very involved. What do you kind of give me a picture of what you think we get from Siakam in Game 6, both with and without Haliburton on the floor?
I think that, first, Pascal Siakam is one of my favorite guys, especially like not traditional superstars. One of my favorite guys to watch. He is so smooth. He can score in so many ways. He gets you in that mid post, and you're right. He shoots over a lot of these smaller Thunder defenders. And I think that you're right. They have to keep him involved. Even if Tyrese Haliburton does play and is on the ball a ton, they have to get him involved. And I like when they get him involved early in the shot clock. It felt like there were a lot of possessions during that kind of definitive stretch where Oklahoma City stretched its lead. And then late in the game, it just felt like there were times where things got late in the shot clock and all of a sudden you're asking either it's Siakam or someone else, like, hey, create off the dribble against a team that doesn't allow you to create off the dribble. So I would love to see him involved earlier. I'd love to see him catching in advantageous positions, like in the mid post. He even can get there in the low post. I'd like to see him involved as a screener, get Chet Holmgren or whoever is defending him on the move, maybe away from the basket. I think that it's really important for him to have a really, really good game, but especially he cannot turn the ball over. And 6 turnovers, I think some of those were late in the clock where it's either going to be a turnover or a missed shot or a bad shot at least. So I want to see him involved earlier on in more advantageous positions. It felt like they did a good job of getting him in those advantageous positions, but it was kind of just a little bit too uneven in terms of when he got the ball. And especially if Haliburton doesn't play, Pascal Siakam, he is your number one offensive force. Still had even 5 assists. So you see he can move the ball. He's the one guy that, you're right, there's not really a body that Oklahoma City can put on him that really matches up well. Obviously Holmgren does a great job, but if you can move him away from the basket, that's a big help. It's a tough balance because you want Pascal Siakam in these, in the mid post where he's so good, but you also want to move Chet Holmgren away from the basket because he's such a good rim protector. So I have trust in Rick Carlisle. I think that getting Siakam involved early and often, and especially being able to get it in places where Chet Holmgren is away from the basket, maybe use Pascal Siakam. Obviously, he's not going to be on the ball all the time, but maybe as that secondary distributor will be to Indiana's advantage.
Joined by Zach Pereles, who writes for CBSSports.com. He's got a fantastic newsletter that you should definitely go and subscribe to. Siakam, going to be really important whether, Haliburton plays or not, kind of like what you were saying. And there's 2 other guys in this series that need to be discussed. Let's talk about Jalen Williams, who after game 1 has been incredible. And people here in Indianapolis love Aaron Nesmith. But Aaron Nesmith cannot defend Jalen Williams. That is very true. Like, we've seen it over the course of these last 4 games. And I think a lot of people, not me, because I thought that Jalen Williams was a stud before this year even started. A lot of people are having this, not revelation, epiphany's too big of a word, but I think they're having this realization that Jalen Williams is awesome and he can be your second best player on a championship team. Has your view of Jalen Williams kind of changed throughout this finals? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think that game 5 was probably a turning point for me. You're right. He has been good since really game 2, but game 5 was probably the point where I was like, this is him putting it all together. I think the thing that got me so excited about him last year is that he shot 43% from 3, and all of a sudden you're like, here's this big guy who can put it on the deck, finish at the rim, shoot in the mid-range, and now he's going to shoot 43% from 3, and that fell to 36% this year. And then he had made 3 3-pointers through 4 games of this series. Then he made 3 3-pointers in game 5, and that was when you saw, wow, this guy is really, when he is making that 3, it can really be the full package there. And you saw, all of a sudden Indiana defenders have to pump fake at his, or, have to contest his 3-pointer. Then he's really able to put it down on the floor and get to the basket, hit a couple mid-range jumpers. He just, as soon as he starts hitting 3s, you're in big, big trouble. And yeah, I do think like that's hey, I can be the number 2 on a championship winning team. He obviously is a really good defender, and that spurred a lot of that late run. But I was just so impressed with when he made these shots. I think The Pacers cut it down to 2. He hits a 3 on the wing. He was a big part of that late game kind of pull away with turnovers and getting out on the break. And I would say one thing that Indiana can do a better job of is when he is getting to the rim and he's getting downhill, the fouls have to be harder. They have to be, I'm not saying anything dirty, obviously, but they have to be good, hard playoff fouls because he's getting too many and one opportunities. I can remember a couple in Game 5 alone that really just, when he gets to the basket, like they have to be good, hard fouls. They have to be playoff fouls. The Thunder, one thing that they do obviously very well is they play physically, but when they foul hard and they foul cleanly, but they foul really hard. You don't see a ton of 3-point, the old-fashioned 3-point play opportunities for the Pacers or for anyone that they've played this year. I would love to see the Pacers there were too many times where it was just like a swipe across the arm. And when he's downhill with all this momentum and his strength and his athleticism, that's not good enough defense. He is going to finish too many of those plays. And all of a sudden, this team that doesn't shoot a ton of threes is getting a bunch of old-fashioned 3-point plays.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. That's a really good point about how the fouls from the Pacers need to be tougher on Jalen Williams. They've done a really good job of not fouling SGA in this series before Game 5. But they have not done a good job of containing Williams. And look, like when you get to the foul line 12 times a game, like that just makes scoring so much easier because then you get in a rhythm and all those other cliche things that we say about getting to the foul line. The last guy that I want to talk about is Myles Turner. A lot of mixed feelings about Myles Turner here in Indy. Once again, joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking about this Pacers and Thunder NBA Finals. Myles Turner, obviously, his contract expires at the end of this year. He's probably going to go for somewhere around $30 million a year. He's not having a very good NBA Finals. What is your take on Myles Turner? Do you like him? Do you not like him? Where are you at with him?
Yeah, I think Myles Turner is one of these guys who you always want him to be a little bit better because you see the glimpses. And I do like Myles Turner as a player and as a fit for the Pacers, who are a team that he fits well. He shoots the 3-ball well. I know it hasn't been great this series, but judging him off of finals against a historically great team and a historically great defense, I think to me is a little bit haphazard, is a little bit overreactionary. I think that he's a good player. Is he like a cornerstone center who can take over a game? Probably not, but he's a really good catch and shoot center. He allows you to preserve that 5-out offense. It's just, again, it's like, do you want to see a little bit more from him? Yes. I think the big thing that I noticed is when it's not him on the court, it's like you're either going really small or you're playing Tony Bradley or Thomas Bryant, which you start, getting to those options and you're like, well, now I see what we have in Myles Turner. So maybe it's one of these things where they just need a different sort of look when he goes to the bench, because he's not like one of these centers that can control the game. You're not going to post him up a ton, but he is a solid starter on a finals worthy team. I think that that's something that can be commended and something that you don't just get rid of, especially at a time where, obviously, I don't want to look past the rest of this series, but the East looks really winnable for, at least next year. And I just don't think that you disrupt what you have in the Pacers, who have been to a conference finals and now an NBA finals with a very solid center who fits what they want to do offensively.
I agree with you. My take on Myles Turner, and this is, like what I think it is harder to play center in the NBA now than it's ever been, because like these big 7-footers are asked to do like a million things. Like you have to be able to shoot. You got to be able to protect the rim. You have to be able to play make while you're rolling to the rim. You have to be able to, you have to be able to switch and defend guards sometimes on the perimeter. And it's really hard. And I think it's kind of like playing running back in the NFL, where we see teams in the NFL do this whole running back by committee thing because it's hard to find running backs who can run between the tackles, have the breakaway speed to run the ball on the edge, can pass protect, and can catch the ball out of the backfield. And like, I think it's really similar to that in terms of they're being asked to do a lot. Like I think there's 5 centers in the NBA that are good enough to play in every playoff series. I think there's really only 2 perfect centers, and every other center in the league like has issues. And so your backup center and your third string center have to give you other options. And Tony Bradley and Thomas Bryant don't give the Pacers that. And so you're forced to leave Myles Turner on the floor because he's better than those 2 other options. And it leads to you seeing the issues with Myles Turner, which is he doesn't rebound the ball very well. He's not super switchable. But like you said, he runs the pick and pop incredibly well. He's a really good catch and shoot center. He shot 39% from 3 during the regular season, which is hard to believe right now because he's in a major slump. And he's a really good, I don't think he's a great, but I think he's a really good rim protector. So I think what the Pacers need to do is get rid of Thomas Bryant and Tony Bradley and bring in some backup centers who just give you more options.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, too, like, you're watching the Thunder who just, they have everything, but at center to be able to play 2 centers, like the Pacers have one that can really kind of survive on the floor. The Thunder start 2 at the same time. So it's such a difference of, yeah, Myles Turner, maybe he hasn't played great this series, but the opponent that he's going against, like, just has answers for everything. You've seen Myles Turner have really good games previously in these playoffs. And you're right, he's not a perfect center. There are definitely things that are imperfect, but when you play, just because his weaknesses are emphasized against this team that is long and athletic and somehow can play 2 centers and not really lose anything defensively, just because Myles Turner doesn't look quite as good against those teams, I don't think that it's an indictment of him as a player. And the other thing is, I think that he will age reasonably well. He's 29, I think, 29 yes. right now.
Yes.
He will age reasonably well. Like, he should be able to continue to shoot the ball well. I understand the rebounding isn't there, and that is an issue, but he should age reasonably well, I think, just given kind of his offensive game. And he really needs to be, I think, complemented by another center. That's when he's the best, and it just hasn't quite been there for the Pacers. But again, against the Thunder, I don't want to say Myles Turner is, not extendable or can't be on the floor, because you look at a lot of guys who have played the Thunder this year. If you judge them by how they played against the Thunder, you would think that nobody belongs in the NBA.
That's fair. And look, I think he's been better than Chet Holmgren in a lot of these games. And he's done a really good job defending him. And the other thing about the rebounding is, if you go back and you look at the numbers, I think this is important for teams as well, not just the Pacers. Like, you need a power forward that complements your center. Pascal Siakam was like the 7th best rebounding power forward in the NBA this year. And so, he's a guy who, Myles Turner's post-up game isn't great, but like, he doesn't need to have a great post-up game because Pascal Siakam does that really well. And so I think you're right. I do think he's going to age well. He's a really good fit for what this Pacers team does. I think he fits well alongside Siakam because he can space the floor. Yeah, totally agree with you. Zach, thanks for your time, man. You were great as always.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, wait, last thing. Do the Pacers win tomorrow night?
Oh, man. I don't know if your listeners are going to love me, but I'm going to say no. I think Oklahoma City, has kind of found its rhythm. They really needed that strong, obviously, to not go down 3-1, but just to prove to themselves, like, hey, we can close a game in game 4. And I think you saw that again in game 5. Like, when things get close late, we can survive, which it didn't seem like they could do that through 3 games. Now they've done it, and now I think you see them close it out in game 6.
If Haliburton plays, I think the Pacers are going to win. I think it's hard. I don't think you can fake being desperate. And the Pacers have been right there in every game except for game 2. And I think that desperation factor is going to push them over just enough to force a Game 7. I'm also saying this because I really want a Game 7.
I think everyone does.
All right, Zach, thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, thank you.
See ya. That is Zach Pereles. Go check him out on X. You can follow him at Zach_Pereles. He does an excellent job covering all things across the sports world. Go check out his newsletter as well. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, we're going to talk about something. I don't know. We're probably going to do Haliburton's MRI on his calf, and then we'll probably talk a little bit more Myles Turner.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, it's been a great show today. You know, talk a little bit of Caitlin Clark and all the WNBA drama that people love for some reason, and talked about Pacers, Myles Turner, his future, why he's important, what the Pacers really need, which is to bring him back, and more importantly, bring back some backup centers that complement what he does a little bit better. Game 6 tomorrow night. Can't wait for that one. It's going to be an outstanding game. But they're not winning that game unless Tyrese Haliburton's healthy. It's really that simple. I don't think that this needs to be some long 15-minute thing. But look, he is the Pacers' best player. And when he doesn't play well, they lose. When he's not available, oh my gosh. Can you imagine? If he doesn't play tomorrow night, then they are going to lose. We haven't really heard much. Coach Carlisle said this morning that they're monitoring him really closely, and kind of sounds like he's going to be a game time decision. They're going to have to, they'll make that decision day of. He's going to play. Most guys that are game time decisions play. Like, he got hurt in the first half, and he came back and he played the entire second half. And in fact, he looked better in the second half than he did in the first half. So about 15 minutes before tip-off tomorrow night, they're going to shoot something in his calf to kind of ease the pain a little bit. And we're going to hope that he doesn't tear his Achilles like Kevin Durant did when he strained his calf. Okay, that is the hope. Because if he doesn't play, then the Pacers are going to turn the ball over way too much in order for them to be able to win. It's the reality of it. Because if you look at game 1, the Pacers had Andrew Nembhard. The Pacers had Andrew Nembhard initiate a lot of their offense. Excuse me. And they turned the ball over 25 times in that game. And then they go back to Haliburton a little bit more in games 3 and 4. He's running more of the offense. He's bringing the ball to the floor a little bit more. Late in game 4, the Thunder start to press Tyrese Haliburton. Game 5, they assumed that more of that's going to happen. It did. And so they had Andrew Nembhard initiate the offense a little bit more, because having to bring the ball up, 94 feet with Lou Dort harassing you the whole way is really, really tough. It is, especially when you're over 100 games into the season. So what do? They have Andrew Nembhard initiate more of the offense. And what happens? Pacers go back to turning the ball over way too much. And so that's going to be problematic. I don't think that they can withstand this Oklahoma City Thunder team without their best player in Tyrese Haliburton. So he's got to play tomorrow night. If he doesn't, then give the trophy to the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's really the reality of it. However, if he does play, then I like the Pacers to win, and I like them to give the Oklahoma City Thunder a really tough Game 7 on the road. Okay, that's what I'm hoping for. That's obviously what you're hoping for as well. I want as much basketball as possible. And I can't wait to see these two teams battle it out on Thursday night. And we'll kind of see how it goes. Roswell chiming in the chat saying that, the Cubs are plus 6.5. It's true. But no one cares about that right now, because the College World Series is going on. The College World Series is the most underrated postseason format of any sport, college or professional. And we're down to the final 4 teams. Games continue for that at 2:00 today. And then we'll see if there are more games tomorrow night or not. But I can't wait. Can't wait. Anyway, that's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to tune in. Tomorrow's show, it's going to be great. And you're going to want to tune in 10 to noon. As always, the Real Jonathan Smith Show. It's going to be a blast, because it always is, as I get you ready for Game 6 tomorrow night. Hopefully, we're going to have a guest, maybe 2 on tomorrow, to kind of aid me in getting you ready for Game 6. Hopefully, Tyrese Haliburton plays. That is going to be the main topic. We should find out at some point tomorrow. Hopefully, it breaks during the show. And if so, we'll talk about it live right here on Indy's Sports Ticket. The Dan Dockett Show starts at noon. He's got a great show lined up for you. 3 great guests are scheduled, and it's going to be a great time. I will talk to you tomorrow starting at 10 a.m. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes.